Oh, okay. Well, I guess now is the time to give my thoughts about the game. So I would generally roughly break Fire Emblem down into, or Fire Emblem games, not necessarily all video games, but Fire Emblem games down into three categories of like what I assess. There's the gameplay, there's the presentation, and then there's the like story writing and characters. I think the gameplay in this game is great. It's not perfect, but it's a lot of fun, and the even like though there's like some stuff that's frustrating or confusing or whatever, I think that the foundation is really solid. I think that the map design is generally above average for the series. There's a lot of interesting stuff to do. Overall, it's a good experience. The I think the downsides to the gameplay are primarily in the ways in which it's overcomplicated. Maybe the most central example of this is the SP system. I think like having this second kind of XP bar where, you know, with the skill inheritance is like just overcomplicated relative to how skills and skill management has worked in previous entries. Like regardless of what you think of skills, like whether they're good or bad or, you know, neutral, you know, if you want to use them or not, I just think that the way that the system works in this particular game like is overcomplicated in the details. I would want to, like, if I were going to make another game with this as like the foundation, I would want to streamline that, probably just by having, like, you know, the classic like level cap, or not level cap, but like level based unlock. You know, maybe make it harder to build the bond rank, but then make it so that once you built a given bond rank, you can just inherit the skill straight up. I don't know, something like that. I don't know if the intent is like that you go grind for SP, but I don't think that's good. I don't approve. And I guess more generally, I think that there's too many currencies in the game, so that SP and XP aren't exactly currencies, but SP kind of works like one because you can choose to spend it in a way that's not true of XP. But there's also like the different forging materials, and there's bond fragments, and there's the materials that you use for forging emblem weapons. I think that one in particular is bad. I think it's unfortunate that the emblem weapons suffer like if you don't do the optional content, and they like end up being worse than your regular forged weapons. I don't think that's good design at all. So that's another system where I would simplify. I don't know how exactly I would simplify it. Like, I am sympathetic to the idea that forging shouldn't just be money-based, but I think, you know, maybe having just, like, one, you know, thing that's, like, forge points, or, like, I don't know, something that simplifies that would be better. In any case, yeah, so I think that's overcomplicated. But like, I really like the break system and the overall like design of the weapon system. I like the class, like the fact that the classes feel diverse in this game. Not necessarily like every single class is unique, but that it feels like it's meaningful what classes you're in, and like there are like legit like class counters where, you know, this class is strong against that class and that sort of thing, in a way that is often not very true in older entries. And like the class characteristics or whatever they're called, like, you know, key adept and backup and, you know, flying and cavalry and all that stuff. I think that's like a cool concept. I think they did some cool stuff with it. I think I would be happy to play a Fire Emblem game that didn't. I mean, the emblems are fun, and I think like they're fun to use. It's like an interesting concept and what it enables you to do with your units. But I would happily play a game that just had like the break system and the class system, without the emblem stuff. Like, I think that would be a good game. I do think that the smash weapons also, I mentioned the weapon system. I think the smash weapons in particular, like the smash part of it is not so relevant, and I think that's not like a big problem. It's more like a nitpick. But I would say that it would be nice if that felt like it mattered more. But I think that the fact that you have these like non-doubling like super high might weapons is interesting, and I think that's like a cool part of the weapon system. So overall, I think that's like, on balance, I think it's still a good thing. All right, I assume we're gonna get unit records now. Be interesting to see top 5 looks like. Wait, are we going? We're not doing a top 5, or is Alir not in the top 5? That's actually pretty... Yeah, I guess Alir's maybe not top 5. I guess we'll find out soon enough. I like seeing them in order, but anyway, I don't really care about the text here, so I'm just gonna keep talking through it. So yeah, overall, I think the gameplay in this game is great. Like, there's things that could be improved. Mostly not stuff that's happening like in the chapter, though. Most of the stuff that I even like would consider gameplay that I think could be improved is happening like outside of the chapter, like in the Somniel or whatever. So really, like the actual like playing the chapter experience, I think is very, very solid. One of the better games. It's one of the reasons I'm looking forward to playing back through it and being able to skip through all the story stuff. I think the presentation is solid, not amazing. The graphical fidelity is good. The animations are very good. And there was a lot of good stuff done with the UI, but I think the character designs are like sometimes awful and almost never good, or great, maybe is what I'll say. Almost never great. Like, okay, here's an example. Like, that dress is so ridiculous. Like, what is going on? and the hat isn't great either. Like, just like ridiculous amount of hair. Like, I don't know. Celine just looks so ridiculous. Like, Louis' design is fine, but it's very, you know, it's very plain. Like, it's not bad, but it's not great. But like a lot of characters, like I don't like Alir's design. You know, there's characters like Tamara and Hortensia whose designs are just like over the top ridiculous. There's characters like Panette whose designs are like not that bad for the most part, but they have some detailing that's like really strange. There's the stuff about like the really pointy like fingers and like stuff like that. If you compare this game to Three Houses visually, like in the sort of at the high level, it looks better. Like the rendering is better. The animations are much better. Like the color palette is nicer, and the portrait art is higher quality. Like the Three Houses portrait art is like a little weird. I thought so, like when it was first announced. But the Three Houses character designs are so much better than the designs in this. I'm just talking about visually. I said 226 wins. Alchrist, I think, actually beat Alir. I guess that's not super surprising. It's kind of surprising. Anyway, yeah. So I think, yeah, the visual design like really suffers because of how like not great a lot of the character designs are. The funny thing about that, oh god, like, and then yeah, this like generic mage outfit, which looks so much worse than Citrine's base design. Citrine's base design is one of the better character designs, and then it totally ruins it when she promotes, which sucks. The funny thing is that a lot of the designs, okay, Ivy, another example, like with the ridiculous pointy things and whatever is going on her head, like, the. So the funny thing is that a lot of the designs of the casual outfits in the Somniel are better than the combat outfits, which is interesting. Like, yeah, it's interesting that like a lot of them are toned down and they look more like dignified. Like characters like I don't remember what Tamara's looks like, but like Hortensia's I know is like much less ridiculous. Ivy's is less ridiculous. Yeah, I don't know. There's other examples, I'm sure, but anyway, so it's like the possibility, I guess, was there, or like anyway, so that's the big downside of the visual design. The other thing is that I think there's still like significant work to be done with like combination of UI and quality of life stuff. The Somniel's design is definitely less clunky than the Monastery from Three Houses, but it's still like they still really need to let you just do everything directly from menus, so you don't have to go through loading screens. Like being able to, like, as a simple example, I wanted to give gifts to people earlier, like before I started recording this, or I guess after I started recording it, but before I started playing the chapter, I was like, oh, I'm gonna max out Alir's support. Like, not everybody is available in the Somniel, and so I have to keep going in and like doing like a rest thing and like re-rolling the RNG. I guess that's not, exactly the same as what I'm talking about, except that I had to keep reloading the map and go through a loading screen to be able to do that. There's a similar thing where it's like if you want to forge and you're in the battle, you have to go back. Like, why can't you just like forge and do skill inheritance and all that stuff like from a menu where it's all there? Like the arena, why can't you skip the intro dialogue in the arena? Like just all of that kind of stuff gets aggravating. There's also just the fact that some of the stuff that you can do in the Somniel is really like not fun at all. Like the fishing in particular is just like so bad. And the funny thing about it is it gets worse. Like, you get better at fishing, like you get the bigger rods, and that means you can fish more, and you're just like, oh no. I stopped doing fishing like quite a while ago, but I just like could not deal with it. That's not really a quality of life thing. That's actually a gameplay thing, but it's optional, so that helps. Anyway, so let's see. I guess the other thing is that I just kept running into that thing about the difference between like in-use and performance stats of weapons and how to like see one or the other of those in the UI. There's a similar thing where you can't necessarily see crit rates and maybe dodge rates from like the bar at the bottom that has like the basic unit stats. I feel like the choice of what to show there like is not quite right. Although I do think, to be fair, that having that bar at all is a big improvement. So like, I'm not trying to say that like, oh, this is worse than in previous games. I think overall the UI there is better than in probably any previous game. Even probably the dual screen ones, incredibly enough. Like, I just think it's really, like, there's a lot of good information, but it's still not perfect. I guess the other thing I'll mention about presentation is audio. I didn't honestly really notice much in terms of the like thinking about like the sound or the music or whatever. Not to say that it was necessarily bad, but it also wasn't. There wasn't anything that like particularly stood out to me. I don't know. Like, that could just be because I haven't, like, a lot of times it takes a while before like music from a game will like settle into my brain and be like, oh, I really like that track, or like I'd have to hear it like out of the context of the game where I'm like paying attention to it or something. I don't know. Seedall was attacked more than one time in the entire game. What the heck? What? Anyway, maybe you have to like attempt to deal damage or something. I don't know what that's about. Anyway, so I don't have much to say either way about the audio. I just like it didn't. There was nothing that jumped out at me, but I don't necessarily think that means that the music was bad or anything. It might mean that it's not as good as in other games, but I'm not even confident to say that. And then I guess so then the final of the three things is like the story / writing / characters, and it's garbage. I mean, I've made that very clear, but I think the particular thing that was disappointing to me in that respect is like I expected the story to be trash going into this. Like it really did not look promising at all. But the character writing, like, or the characterization, character development, whatever, that's the part where I'm like, even the Fire Emblem games that have like bad stories usually have better characters than this one does. Maybe, I don't know, maybe that's not actually true. Maybe I'm like looking back with rose-tinted glasses on, you know, like Fates would be the big one where, you know, it's like a comparably bad story. Although they're bad in pretty different ways. Like this one, to its credit, this one is not trying to be good in the way that that Fates is trying to be good. But then again, it's also kind of to its discredit. Like I think trying to have a good story is a good idea in general. And you know, if you I don't know. I would rather they try than not try. I don't necessarily think that they need to try to be ambitious, but like this one, they're just like not even trying to make a good story. I don't think. And but I mean that does mean that they're not necessarily like trying and failing to do stuff as much. But I don't know. I still would expect to have more work put into like the quality of the characters and the character writing and all that. And yeah, I don't know. There's just not much in the way of good, memorable characters in this game. Maybe I need to see more supports or something, but so many of the characters are just kind of boring and forgettable. I don't know. I mean, a lot of my feelings about the characters come from the gameplay, and that's not just true in this game. It's true in general in Fire Emblem games, and it makes sense. Like, it's what you would expect because that's your actual primary means of interaction. But I don't know. It's a lot of like a combination of like, you know, sort of one-note characters and people saying like just like kind of very, you know, generic platitude-ish stuff, and they're not being. I think the real problem is that there's because the world is so undeveloped. Like there's so little world building. There's so little like context for anything that's going on that there's nothing to play off of. So you don't get, things like, there's no equivalent of somebody like Dedue who's from like this interesting place, because there are no interesting places. Or like, the equivalent of like the Lagoos, or the, like, I don't know, the person who was involved in this, in some prior conflict, because there is no like real prior conflict like to speak of, or anything along those lines. I mean, there is like 1,000 years ago or whatever, but in terms of like something that would actually be relevant for any of the other characters who aren't dragons. Anyway, so yeah, I think that's probably a big part of it. Is it's just hard to play off of stuff like, in Three Houses you get stuff like, Mercedes, thinks this about the church, and because of her background, and then like other people, Lawrence thinks this about the church and thinks this about nobility, and stuff like that. Like Three Houses in particular, I think does a really good job of having a cast, like a diverse and interesting cast of characters. Like not every single character is interesting, but most of them are pretty interesting, and you get like a good sense of who they are and like what differentiates them and what their relationship is to like what's going on into the world and all that kind of thing. And yeah, you just don't get that with this game like at all. So yeah, I think that's the way in which the game disappointed me more so than like the story itself. Is like, because they didn't do world building and the characterization was so weak, it just like there's just kind of like nothing to latch on to and be like, okay, I'm enjoying this aspect of it. Yeah. Fortunately, the gameplay's really good, so you just play the game and then it works out. But yeah, I guess that's probably the big thing. Or sorry, that's probably all the things that I wanted to cover, I think.